Begin the current Daf Mesechta Yevamos Daf Kof Hey. We begin on the bottom of Kof Daled Beis, second line up from the bottom of the Yomid. The Gemara is in the middle of a discussion from the halacha of the father Shmuel. The halacha that they sent to the father Shmuel was that if the Yevama did just the Rikika, so then she has to do Chalitza. It's going to invalidate her. So the Gemara was attempting to find out who the Tana was. They said it couldn't be Rabbi Kiva, it couldn't be Rabbi Lezer. It has to be Rebbe. Rebbe is the one who says that if you have just one of the two matirin, like we brought his halacha regarding the shchita and the zrikas adam of the kivsei atzeres to be mekadosh the lechem, although you need to have the shchita and the zrika to be matter the breads, but to be paisel it at least, that's going to be enough with doing one of the two lishman, and therefore we did shchita lishman, the zrika shalil lishman, Rebbe held it kodesh ve'ina kodesh. Not totally kaddish to be permitted to be eaten, but it's to be kaddish to become possible b'yaitse. That's who the opinion is going like, that if she did already the rikika, although that's not enough obviously to be mater her for chalitza, because she still has to take off the shoe, which is what the chalitza is called, but it's going to be enough to say that you can't do yibum anymore. That's what the Gemara had attempted to prove it's like Rebbe, and that's what the Gemara is going to continue in saying. It actually could be not only like Rebbe, it could even be like Rebbe Kiva. She corresponds to today's daf. Something that's going to discuss in today's daf are the halacha of Yevama, who only performed Rikika. As we mentioned, she didn't do more than the spitting. What's the halacha of Rikika that preceded the Chalitza? Because the spitting is supposed to be after. What happens if you do it before the Chalitza? Yevama shiraka kardam. We know that the Yevama is supposed to spit. What happens if she doesn't spittle? She actually spits out blood. The machlok is regarding the required age of a Yevama for Chalitza. How old does she have to be? So begin the current daf, as we said that we had this halacha of Shalchli Labu de Shmuel of Yevama Shiraku Kartachlis, Yevama who performed Rikika. She has to continue and perform Chalitza. Yeah, that implies that through Rikika she's disqualified from Yibum. So the Gemara wants to attempt to say that it's actually could even be like Rabbi Kiva, because as the Gemara begins with on Daf Daled Beis, second line up at the bottom of the Amid, says the Gemara, B'yom Rabbi Kiva Rikika loy paslo. Do you think Rabbi Kiva holds that the spittle itself, although yes, he obviously holds that the chalitza of the shoe is ma'akim, and you need more than one matir, do you really think he holds that the spittle itself will not invalidate her and make her that she can't do yibum anymore, she has to do chalitza? But Vatanya, learn the brisa. Choltza b'loy continue to the top of Kafei Medal, Drakaka, V'likara. Let's say she only took off her shoe, but she didn't do the two other things of spitting and saying the psukim of Mein Yevami that doesn't want to do yibum. So then the halacha is chalitza sikcher. Okay, you did the main thing, which is what the title of chalitza is. It's taking off the shoe. It's going to be valid. Let's say drakaka. Let's say she spit, but she didn't take off the shoe and she didn't say the psukim that she's supposed to say. So chalitza psula. The chalitza is invalid, and as the Gemara is going to explain, this is the main point. But it's going to invalidate her on the brothers from doing yibum. Once she even did the spitting, that's enough. Again, it's puzzle, but it's going to make her not able to do yibum anymore. Let's say kara, say each one, you don't do the other two. Kara, she read the psukim l'iraka v'lechalza, but she didn't spit and she didn't take up the shoe. Inka beis meicher, so there's nothing to be concerned about over here. And she's not even invalidated from doing yibum, she could even still do yibum. That's this brisa. Says the Gemara, Mani, who's the Tana of the brisa, Elam, Rabbi Eliezer, everything would be Rabbi Eliezer. How could that be? In the case of chalza v'leiraka v'lekara, we said in this brisa, if she did chalitza, she took up the shoe, but she didn't spit, she didn't say the psukim, chalitza sikcher, it's going to be a valid chalitza. But Rabbi Eliezer said in our Mishnah, it says in the pasuk kacha ya'asa, like this you should do, which he explained that to mean. Anything that's an action is integral, which includes not only taking off the shoe, but also the spitting. Not like Rabbi Kiva who held that it's kach ya'asa ish, whatever's done to the man, which only taking off the shoe. So it obviously cannot be Rabbi Eliezer. Elabshita Rabbi Kiva has to be like Rabbi Kiva. Rabbi Kiva holds, yes, if you did the chalitza, that's the one action that's done to the man, kach yasa le'ish. So therefore, that's going to be valid, even though you didn't do the other two things. Now, so it's like Rabbi Kiva, but Tani, what was one of the cases we said in the brisa? Let's say she spit, and she did not take up the shoe, did not say the psukim. What's the halacha? Chalitzasa psula. Those are the words that the brisa says. Her chalitza is invalid. Now, laman. In other words, for whom do you need to tell me that it's going to be pesula, as the Gemara explains? Elim, if you think to say that it's not going to permit her la'alma, it's not a valid chalitza, will not permit you to marry other people. Pshita, obviously. Mihav chalitza, can you think it's going to be chalitza, the ishtariyah la'alma, that it should be permitted to marry someone else? You didn't do the main word of chalitza, you didn't take off the shoe, you just spit. Elalab, rather when we're saying it's a pesula, it means la'achen, it means to the brothers. Shma mina, as the Gemara tells us in Gittin of Chavdalma Beis, wherever we say chalitza pesula, it's pesula and it invalidates it on the brothers. Meaning, like we say, get puzzle, it's a puzzle get, but it's going to also pesula from kahuna. So it's like this, you're doing it, but it's flawed. But it's going to be enough to invalidate. And therefore, you see that it's possible to say that the halacha of Abu Shmuel was not only according to Rebbe, but even Rebbe Kiva would agree, although he holds, of course, you need both chalitza and rikika to be permitter to the chinit chalitza to permitter, and rikika is not even critical. But if you did rikika, it's enough to make it pesula, because we proved that this brayso is like Rebbe Kiva, and the brayso is saying rakaka b'loy chalza. The halacha is that's going to be pesula, and it's obvious pesula doesn't mean to the velt, to other people. Obviously, it means to say to the brothers, it will be enough to invalidate. But then the Gemara has a question. It says, Rebbe Kiva, Maishna Rekika. What's the difference when the woman does the spitting, which you're telling me will invalidate her on the brothers, that the yibum cannot be done anymore, you have to do chalitza. Umaishna Kriya. And what's the difference about the reciting of the psukim that does not invalidate her? Because the Brisa said, if all you did was the reading of the words, that's nothing they could be concerned about. Now the question essentially is, since both of them according to Rebbe Kiva are not ma'akiv, he holds, not like Rebbe Eliezer, he holds all you have to do is the chalitza. So why when you do the spitting will it invalidate? And when you do the kriya of the psukim, it's not going to invalidate. They're both not ma'akiv. What's the difference? So the Gemara says, yeah, it's really a good question, but there is enough in our concern, because kriya, the reciting of the psukim, the isa, there are bein betchila, that whether before the chalitza, when she says the words me'in yevame, my yavam doesn't want to do yibum to me, and bein besayf. Also after the chalitza, she says kacha ya'asa, so too shall be done to such a house. So, and that's because the order is kriya, chalitza, rekika, and kriya. So therefore, even if we're going to say that she could do yibum, loy mechalfa lei, people are not going to confuse this woman with a bona fide chalutza to say that, that after chalitza she's going to do yibum, because they're going to say, the psukim that she said were before the chalitza. So we're not concerned about mixing up anything. But if she spit, the betchila lasa, there's no spitting in the order before the chalitza. It's only after the chalitza that you do the spitting. So even though she actually did the spitting without chalitza, but machalfale, people are going to get confused and mix up. They're going to say, wait a second, I was in Bezdin the other day and I saw a woman spitting by her brother-in-law. For sure she had already done chalitza because that's the appropriate order. And even so, I see they're married now.
They would see her doing the second kriya.
No, so that's he wants to say that here. You wonder if they heard the psukim, if they were so medayik. I hear. It sounds like a kriya that they're not going to confuse. I'm saying if she said that, if she's why would she say the second psukim if they didn't even do? I'm saying those are the psukim of the after they did the chalitza. He wonder if they did. Good shayla. So in that case, it would be confusing. They might come to admit a chalutza to the brothers, and that's the difference. You're right. Technically, in the conceptualization of the kriya and the rikika, shouldn't be any different. They're both nama'akim. And you're right. That itself should not forbid her from doing yibum, as we find by the kriya of the psukim. By the rikika, we're just concerned simply because people assume that it's been after the chalitza, even though she didn't, they only did rikika, and therefore that's why we say that it's going to be psula and it's going to at least be paisla achen, and that's why that's a halacha Abu Shmuel that even Rabbi Kiva would agree to that she cannot do yibum anymore. Now that was one version. Those that say a different version, this is what they said to the father Shmuel. There's a second half to this teaching. Yevamos Daf, the Yevama who performed rikika tachlitz must continue and perform chalitza, but there was an added words. The first version had it without the second half of the statement. Stop. She did rikika to chalitza, and that's what we were handling regarding why she have to do chalitza, why is she puzzle, why can't she still do yibum? Who is it like? Is it like Rebbe? Is it like Rebbe Kiva? This version had one more half to the statement that she has to continue chalitza, and she does not have to do the rikika a second time. As we find, there was a woman that came in front of Rabbi and for chalitza. Rabbi Yosef Rabbi Mamam was sitting in front of him, and Raka made the tachlitz. So this woman was an impetuous woman. She didn't do it the right order. She spit before she took off the shoe, which really the order is you take off the shoe, then you spit. So only Rabbi said to him, Chalitzla, okay, do chalitza for her, b'shavla tigra, and finish up her case. Meaning you could send her away. So Rabbi said, but after the chalitza, he's supposed to spit. So he says, she already spit already. So, yeah, but the appropriate order is to do it afterwards. Let us spit nachamol and do it the right way. What's the problem? He says, no. It's going to come out something destructive. Why? If you're going to tell her that she has to go and spit again, so how many people are going to say, if a woman did a spitting before the chalitza, there's nothing to be concerned about. But you see she had to do the spittle again. If that's the case, then if a woman's only going to do the spitting, they're not going to validate her from the brothers. They're going to say, that's the gun. So the gun, ich habe gewähnt, bei jedem Gun, ist gemacht, Team der Kika, nachamol, mis sein, ist Gun nicht gewähnt. So if a woman's going to do Rikika, they're going to let her do Yibum. Now the problem is, if you let a woman who does Rikika to do Yibum, someone's going to see that she's doing Yibum, is going to think it's the Rikika after the Chalitza, in the normal way. You're going to come to admit the Chalitza to the brothers, and that's the halacha that was saying, therefore, this woman who did Rikika, that we say just do Chalitza, the halacha is meaning don't do Rikika another time. Because if you do Rikika another time, then people are going to say the first Rikika was nothing, and then people are going to allow such a woman to do Yibum, and if someone allows such a woman to do Yibum, then people are going to think it was the second Rikika, which means to say you allowed a Chalutza to do Yibum. Now, but the Gemara says, but you need the right order, and you didn't do it out of order, you didn't do it in order, you did Rikika then Chalitza. So the order is not integral. Now, who saw the Chuy Komatchile? He thought he was just pushing him away, like giving him what's called a Deichik Teres. But nothing, he went out and he found, and he checked, and he found the time like learned the Brisa. The Brisa says clearly, whether you do the Chalitza before the Rikika as you're supposed to, or whether you did the spitting before the Chalitza, what was done, and that's going to be valid. Now, the Gemara continues with an interesting question. Levi went out to the village, and they asked him the following question. Gidemes, a woman who doesn't have any arms, doesn't have any hands, they're amputated. Ma'usha tachlitz, what's the halacha to do her chalitza with her teeth? So that was one question I asked him. Another question I asked him was, Yevamos Daf, what's the halacha? If Yevamos is spitting out blood, is that a valid chalitza? Because we know she has to spit, but she's not spitting out spit, she's spitting out blood. A third question they asked him was a pasuk in Daniel. The pasuk says, but I'm going to tell you which is written in the truth writing, which the Malach was telling him, that I'm going to tell you whatever was decreed in heaven, and it's written with a writing that's truthful. So the question they asked him was, is that to say that it's a writing that's not truthful in heaven? What does that mean? So the Gemara tells that he didn't have the answer to these questions. So Asa Shol Ben Midrasha came to ask it into the Beis Medrash. Now, interesting, the Teis Yeshanim says that a different version of this in Bereshis Rabbah, when he came in front of the Rebbe and he told him, this is what they asked me, and I didn't know what to answer. So words sound like that. He said until he figured it out on his own. So the Teis Yeshanim asked, why didn't he answer them originally? He said because he was arrogant, because they were honoring him very much, and they put him on a golden bed, and therefore he didn't know what to answer because gaiva makes you forget your learning. But when he was already out of that situation, he was able to have the answer. But because of the gaiva, he didn't know how to answer that. But be that as it may, in our version it says that when he came to the Beis Medrash, they said to him to answer all the three questions. Does it say that you have to chalitza with the hand? Which Taisus points out, although the Yushalmi says, as we mentioned, that there's a Taisus on previous stuff that goes through from the Yushalmi, how everything should be done, holding it with the one hand and then pulling it off with the other hand. Although that they say chalitza should be with the right hand, that's the mitzvah b'alma, but to ma'akev, it's not. It doesn't say anywhere in the Torah that she has to do chalitza with even her hands, let alone the right hand. And yeah, she can do chalitza with her teeth if need be. So regarding the second question, miksiv b'yod kadoik, does it say that she should spit with spittle? That it should sound like that there should only be spittle? It just says v'yodka, which Rashi explains that to mean meaning even spittle and something else. Here also, it's not possible that there shouldn't be any droplets of spittle inside the blood that she's spitting out. So though it's blood, but it doesn't say it has to be only spit. It could be also blood, and therefore that's going to be valid. Regarding the third question, But the Malach telling him that I'm going to tell you over that which is written in the truthful writing. Is the question was, is the writing that's not truthful? On that they answered him, it's not difficult because that one is talking about that there's a decree from heaven that has an oath with it. So what does it mean b'ksav emes? So Rashi explains, HaKadosh Baruch Hu is ma'amsai. He makes it truthful, and meaning he maintains it, meaning he does not go back and nullify it. That's ksav emes. Hashem makes sure it's going to be true because there's an oath with it. But here we're talking about a decree, although it's everything is true, but it could be undone because there's no oath with it that could be undone. That's quote unquote not ksav emes. As we find a similar idea from Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg, he says, from where do we know that if it is the heavenly decree that has an oath with it, doesn't get torn up. So therefore it's going to be always emes. Shlomo can say the pasuk in Shmuel Aleph. Therefore I swore to the house of Eli, if the sin of the household of Eli is going to be atoned for, with sacrifices and flour offerings forever, that will not atone for them. Karbanos will not help them. And that's an oath that never was undone. That's ksav emes, and therefore, as the Gemara is going to explain later on, therefore they would die at a young age. Now, but the Gemara does parenthetically mention, he says, yes, that with karbanos and with flour offerings, that they cannot be atoned for that sin. But they could be atoned for with the learning of Torah. That's what Rabbah says. Abayam, he says, right, they cannot have atonement with karbanos of miskaper, and some Gersayos add on the word b'Torah u b'gemelz chasadim, that, or as our Gersayos have with b'gemelz chasadim, with acts of kindness that could atone it. Now the Gemara points out that these two Amiram, who found loopholes out of the Gezerah of Beis Eli, who said that it won't be with Zevah Mincha, it will be with Torah or Gemelz chasadim, they actually were from the house of the Eli. Rabbi Babayim and the Beis Eli Kasim, which they were Kahanim, they were from the house of Eli. Now, the Gemara tells us that each one actually practiced his pshat, and that Rabba, the Asik B'Torah, Rabba who learned Torah, Chayar Bar Shnin, he actually lived not just like 18, 20, as we'll see later on, they died at younger, he lived till 40. Abai the Asik B'Torah, Ubu Gemelz Chasadim, like his pshat, Chachaya Shit Mishnin, he lived for 60 years. Now, related to this idea, the Gemara tells us that Tarnaban, in the Braisa, there was a family in Yerushalayim. They used to die at 18 years old. So both of these Rabbi Yevamos Daf, they came and told this to Rabbi Yevamos Daf. So Malahem, he said to them, maybe you're from the family of Eli, like it says in the Pasuk in Shmuel Aleph, basically and all the increase of your family, they're going to die as men, which maybe at 18 you become a man, get married then. Either way, well, that's where they die at a young age. Let them go and toil in Torah, let them live. As we said in the Pshat of Rabbah. They went and learned Torah and they lived. They used to call that family Mishpachas Yechanan, based on the name of Rabbi Yevamos Daf, who gave them this idea that they should learn Torah and be able to live longer. Now, the Gemara continues regarding the idea we mentioned before. It says, although he said that actually a gezerah that has a shvuah will not be torn, so a related idea, how do we know that when the tzibur has a gezerah din, has a decree against him, that's not sealed? So the Gemara says, a gezerah din against the tzibur is not sealed? But the pasuk says in Yommi, because even if you're going to wash with neser, a type of a detergent, and you're going to increase this detergent of virus, the stain of your sin is in front of me. You see that there is a gezerah din. Says Gemara, no, rather our question was, how do you know Shafil Nechtem even was sealed miskareh, it could be torn? So although we said the Gzar Din cannot be, but how do we know by its tzibur the Gzar Din in general could be torn? Then like it says the pasuk in Devar, Ki mi kashem alikeinu, who's like Hashem our God, b'chol kereinu lav. Whenever we call out to him, meaning whenever we call out to him, Hashem is going to save us. We see that when it comes to the tzibur, you could always the Gzar could be always torn. The Gemara says, I look says the pasuk in Yeshai dir shoshem b'matzei. Seek God where He can be found, which sounds like He's not always found. It's not at all times, only certain time. It's not difficult. When we talk about by an individual, there are certain times. But the tzibur, at all times, no matter, even if it's sealed, it could be torn. It says, so when is it by an individual that whenever he calls out, Hashem will help him? What's the times of Bimatzai? This is what we call the Aseres Mei'tshuva, the 10 days from Rosh Hashanah to Yom Kippurim. That's where Yachad has a koach like Ketziba. Whenever he calls out, Hashem will help him. Then it's Bimatzai. Now, going back to the halacha we mentioned of Avu de Shmuel. So Shalchali Avu de Shmuel, again, regarding that he sent to the father Shmuel, and it's one of the questions that we had mentioned from Levi. Yevamos Daf, a Yevamot that spits blood, tachlitz. The halacha is she has to do chalitza, meaning she cannot do yibum anymore, because she became invalid, which Tosfos points out, obviously, they first sent their previous question of Yevamos Shadakaka, where in general we had the question. That was the whole, from the previous daf to our daf, we wanted to know if all they did was spit, what's the halacha? And we said it's going to be psula. And then they said this question, which was one step further. Okay, she didn't even do a good spitting. She actually spit blood. Still, the halacha was takal, she has to do chalitza, and she cannot do yibum anymore because she became invalidated. Why? It's not possible that even though she's spitting blood, there's not going to have at least a little bit of spit. And therefore, even that's going to qualify for the rikika, which is going to be a psula, which we said is really a gezerah because of the mistake people are going to make. But the Gemara says, the Gemara says from the following brisa. Brisa says, you would think that blood that comes out of the mouth of someone who's tummy, that it should be tummy like his spit. And the blood that comes out of mipia amba, from his male organ, tummy should also be tummy like his zayv, meaning a zav, he is metame from the liquids that come out of his body. And that's the ziva discharge, that's to carry the seminal discharge, even his urine. All the things that are considered the spring from the zav make a severe level of tumah. So you would think that if, let's say, it's not the liquids themselves that are coming out of the mouth or the male organ, even the blood is coming out, that would also be tamei. That's supposed to be no zoivai tamei. That his ziva, that discharge, his liquids are tamei. But if blood's coming out from his mouth or from his male organ, it's not going to be tamei, it's going to be tar. I thought you said that it's not possible that when you're spitting, even blood, that some spittle is not going to come out. And the spit of a zav is tamei. So why, if he's spitting blood, is it going to be tar? So it's not difficult because kam b'mitzetzes. When did we say it's not possible, there's not some spittles when you're sucking in and then spitting out? So even if you're spitting out blood, then it's not possible that there's not some spit inside of it. The kam b'sheises. When do we say it's going to be tar? When it's just dripping. Dripping could just be from a capillary that burst and there just some blood is dripping out. It's not necessarily there's going to be some spittle, some saliva over there, and therefore that's the difference where we're saying that if it's inevitable or it's not necessarily. Continuing the look of the Mishnah, we said that cheresh shenechletz b'chul. Said in the Mishnah that if a cheresh got chalitza, it's really not on this part, it's really b'chul on the etc., which is on the next halacha, which we said that a chalitza from a cotton is going to be a chalitza psula. We said a katana shachalza, then we have to chalitza when she becomes an adult, and if not, it's chalitza psula. But one thing we see is that when we do chalitza from the cotton, as we said, the words chalitza psula generally means that not only is it not okay, but it's even going to make it problematic on the brothers. So we continue to in Beis, which Amr Yehuda Amr Rav says that Zu Dibur Meir. This halacha is the opinion of Meir, that he said on the Tzadik Vav Meralf in Perkei Rabbah, that we make the chalitza of a 9-year-old like a get by a gadol, meaning the chatz of a cotton is not enough to do a full-fledged chalitza, but, and that's the words in our Mishnah, which we said the words of chalitza psula, which is like when an adult you give to the yavam a get, when the yavam gives the yavam a get, it's going to be at least enough to invalidate. So the halacha of our Mishnah that's telling us that's going to be a chalitza psula, which is not enough to be kosher, but it's going to be enough to invalidate, is like a meir. But the sages, they say, in chalitza is cotton klum. The chalitza of a minor is nothing. Where they disagree over there, and they say, yes, we made the b of a 9-year-old, like a minor by a gadol, but chalitza of a 9-year-old is going to be nothing. And therefore it's not going to be enough even to invalidate. So therefore the halacha of our Mishnah must be like your meir. Now the Mishnah then said, the next halacha was katana shechalza b'chulu, which actually someone asked then, that what's shot by the cotton versus the katana. By the katana we say a lashon that you have to do it mishatagda. So Taisis actually bavarns that shaila, and Taisis brings that question. Remember he asked the question? It was by the second chair, I think upstairs, he asked that question. That what's the Taisis over here asked that question on the top Taisis. He says, because because the Whatever Taisis answer your question, why was it, which was interesting that when you said the cotton, you just said chalitza psula, but by the Gitana, you didn't just say chalitza psula. You said that so just Taisis says it over here. Read that as it may, that the Gemara says, again, the Gemara is pointing out that this halacha, that the chalitza of a katana is going to be psula, is zud divrei Meir. This is opinion of Meir that we know that he holds that both by a cotton and a katana, they can't do chalitza and cannot do yibum. So we're saying the chalitza of a katana is going to be possible. Because the Amr, he says, Ish kasam b'parasha, the Torah tells us in the Baram Chavei, the Imlo Yachbetz, Ish, meaning who is able to do chalitza, is a man, not a cut. Now a woman also, even though it doesn't have a niyut, especially from a woman not to have a minor girl, she has to be an adult like a man. Why? Because Machinan, Ish al Ish. Meir compares the woman to the man, where it says in that pasuk, but also Yevim Tashara, so it's talking about the Yavam in the pasuk. So since the Yavam and the Yavam both mentioned in the pasuk, will be made by the Yavam, that has to be a ish and not a cotton. So therefore we also exclude a katana from doing the halacha of chalitza. So just like we said in the Mishnah that chalitza cotton is psula, so the katana shechalza is also going to be psula. But Chachamim, again, the Chachamim disagree on this halacha also. They say ish kasam b'pasha. Regarding a man, yeah, it says ish, but isha, a woman, which it doesn't say isha, it doesn't say an adult terminology. Begidana. With an adult, remind us again on these two halachas, the Chacham disagree with Remeir. Now the Gemara says, Man Chacham, who are the Chacham that they disagree? It's Rabbi Yasi. What do we find? Just Rabbi Chia, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Yasi, these two Talmid Chacham were sitting, and Pasach Chad Menai Ba'amah, one of them opened up and he said the following halacha. A mispal, if someone's davening, Tzorch Shit in of Lamata. He has to place his eyes downwards towards the ground of Eretz Yisrael, because the Shechina is over there. Shlomo says in the pasuk in Malachim Aleph, "V'hoyu einai v'libi sham kol hayam," that my eyes and my hearts are going to be there all the days. Which a person has to look at the land of Eretz Yisrael. That's where his eyes should be when he's davening. Chadam, the other one says, "No, einav l'malu." His eyes should be upwards towards Shemayim. Krishna says the pasuk in Eicha says, "Nisa levavenu el kapayim." We're going to lift up our hearts with our palms, and the pasuk there continues, El kel b'shamayim, to God in heaven. So just like we lift up our palms, we also are lifting up our eyes towards Shemayim. That was their machlekes. Now the hachi, in the meantime, Asri b'shmo b'bisi l'gabayim. Shmo b'bisi came into the conversation. Amlo says, "B'maiski, so what are you guys handling? What are you guys involved with?" So Amalei, they said, "B'tfilah, I'm like the sugya of davening." Amalahu, he says, "Oh, that's what you guys are disagreeing about. That you should look up, look down." Kacham Abba says, "Let me tell you from the Tata, from Rabbi Yasi." Hamispal, he says like this: whoever's davening, tzarich shittin ein of lamat, he has to look downwards. V'libe lamal, but the heart, his heart has to be upwards. That you could now get the best of both the psukim, because one pasuk says my einai are there, which is facing downwards. The other pasuk says levavenu al kapayim. The heart should be not necessarily eyes. So you mayasha both psukim with the pshat from the Tata. So at the hachi, in the meantime, so these guys are handling in the sugya, these Talmid Chacham handling the sugya of tefillah. Also, Rebbe L'Masifta, the Maggid Shir Rebbe comes into the Beis Medrash to give his shiur klali, and everyone wants to quickly get to the seat. The Rebbe is coming. Now, Inu David Kalili, so those other two Talmid Chacham that they were very light, Yesivu B'duchtayu, so they went to sit in their place. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yisi Agav Yukrei, because he was heavy, he was very fleshy, as the Gemara says this in Bab Mitzvah Pedal But Aleph. So he was stepping and going, meaning he was going slowly. It was hard for him. Now Amalei Avdan, so Avdan, who really Taisa says his name was Abba Yuda in the Yerushalmi, but Avdan was his nickname. In short, people don't want to say Abba Yuda, Avdan, that was his name. He was a student of Rebbe. So he says, who is that? Who is this Shemavasel Rosh Yam Kodesh who's stepping over the heads of the holy people? Meaning they used to sit on the ground. So they're sitting on the ground, and here is someone heavy said is walking over. It looks like he's walking over people's heads. So who is this walking over the holy people? And he says, Ani Yishmael B'Bisi. It's me, Yishmael B'Bisi. Shabasi l'matayim Rebbe, I came to learn Torah from Rebbe. Amalei said to him, you think you're appropriate, you're on the level to learn Torah from Rebbe? Amalei said to him, wait, Moshe was worthy of learning Torah from Hashem? Amalei said to him, Moshe? What are you comparing yourself to Moshe right now? Amalei says, what, you think your master, your Rebbe is God? So Rabbi Yosef said, Shokli Rebbe l'mitrafse. Rebbe took his reward, meaning he got punished because Rebbe heard this exchange. As he's coming to the shiur, he's coming with his, no Gemara, obviously, because they made the Mishnah. He's coming with something, and he's walking with his head, and he didn't protest. So he got punished, the Komalei that Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg was telling Avdan, Rabach, your Rebbe, below your Rebbe, and not my Rebbe. Meaning, he got punished that it was a sign of disgrace to Rebbe that he wasn't saying that it was my teacher, it's your teacher. Adahachi, in the meantime, ask Yevamos to come into Rebbe. So the Rebbe is about to give a shiur, and the Yevamos comes knocking on the door of the Beis Medrash, and Amalei Rebbe la'Avdan. So Rebbe says to Avdan, Puk badka. So go out. I want you to get her checked to see if she really bought 2 pubic hairs to make sure she's an adult, or you can do chalitza. Now the Basid and Nafik, after Avdan went out, Amalei Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg said to Rebbe, he says, Kacha ma'aba. You know what my father said? Ish kosa b'parsha. It says in the Torah, Ish, that's only a man has to be an adult for chalitza. Aval Isha, and again we're pointing out that's Rabbi Yossi, the father of Rabbi Yossi, who he's the one that disagrees with Rabbi Meir and holds that for chalitza, you don't need that the woman has to be an adult, only the man. Aval Isha ben Gedol ben Ketan, whether she's adult or minor. So what are you doing taking this girl out to be checked by the bodekes to see if she has 2 pubic hairs or not? Doesn't make a difference. So Malay, so Rebbe said to Avdan, so, come, late tzrichas. You don't have to get her checked out. The elder Rabbi Yossi, Rebbe was showing deference to the Heilige Tana Rabbi Yossi to say he already ruled, we don't have to get her checked. So Kamafsa Avdan Vasi, so Avdan was stepping over people's heads to come back in. He had his front row seat as the Talmud of Rebbe to come. Rabbi Shloimy Schwartzberg said to him, Misha Tarch Le'am Kaddish, whomever the holy people needs, Yifasel Rosh Am Kaddish could step over the heads of the holy people. Misha Ein Tarch Le'am Kaddish, someone that the holy people does not need, because you already did your shlichus. What are you coming back? How could you step over the heads of the holy people? When you were going to find out for Rebbe doing the holy work, fine, you can step over people's heads. What's this coming back for your own seat? How could you step over the heads of the holy people? So Rebbe said to Avdan, you're right, kum b'tuchtach, stay in your place, stay in the back of the Beis Medrash. Now, Tana will in the Brayso Ba'izah in that moment, when the Rebbe said, stay in your place, instead of Avdan, so Avdan became a Mitzayra, which Rashi points out, the punishment for Lashon Hara, which is disgraceful, derogatory wording that he said to Shmuel Reisi is Nagoyim, so he became a Mitzayra. And B'tobish Nebanav, his 2 sons drowned, and his 2 daughter-in-laws did miyun, which is they were still minors, and they did a refusal on their husbands, and they just walked out. Now, Amar Nachman Yitzchak says, blessed is God, the kaspi la'avdim ha'alma, that he embarrassed Avdan in this world, meaning better you get punished in this world, which he obviously did, than in the next world. Now, Amar Ravami says, from the words of the Great One, which Beribi means the Adam Gadol, meaning of Rabbi Yossi, Nilmad, we learn that a katana, a minor, which again he disagrees with me, he holds that you don't have to be an adult woman to do chalitza, that katana is chalitza b'pu'utas, a young girl can do chalitza even when she's from what's called a pu'uta, a very young girl, meaning which is around age 6 or 7, which a Mishnah teacher said is given up in the Testament Aleph, that the young girls or young boys, they could do business dealings, selling and buying with movable items already at that young age, because they have enough intelligence. So, therefore, we're going to chalitza, since we don't have a miyut, it's going to be kosher as long as when she reaches that stage, where at least she understands a little bit what's going on, that then she can do chalitza. That's one version. Rav Hama, he says, no, although Rabbi Yossi allows even though you're not an adult, but he holds Acha Tigila Inus Nadar. As long as she reaches the age of making vows, which is 1 year before she becomes Bas Mitzvah. As the Mishnah teaches in Nidad Memheim at Beis, if she's 11 years old, then her vows are checked. If she knows for whom she's making a neder and she's making hektish, then it's going to be valid. Where Rabba, as Taisa points out, was explaining in Rabbi Yossi, that he said, yes, you don't have to be an adult, but you still have to know what's going on. And for that he held you have to be the Einus Nadarim. But the Gemara concludes, Melchas Halacha anyways is not like Rabbi Yisi. It's Asher Tavish Teisaris. It's until she brings 2 pubic hairs, which is like her mayor, that she has to be an adult. Also, just like the man has to be an adult for the Halacha of Chalitza.
So what was done by Rebbe was not done correctly?
I'm saying that's so. As Taisus points out, that was it Taisus that the halacha is being said by the Gemara. I mean, everyone had their own Tanoim, they had their own Rebbes. That's the halacha they followed from Rabbi Yisi. But Ravina Ravashi, meaning the Amayram and the Gemara, they passed. I mean, when you had a machlekes Rabbi Lezer in his hometown, they used to chop wood on Shabbos for the bris milah and to make the iron for the bris milah knife to be able to do the. And then his town, that was for them. Yeah, that was their Rebbe. But then the Gemara Paskins, Ravina Ravashi says the halacha is that like Rameya. Mishnah said Cholza b'shnayim uchulu. We had a machlekes in the Mishnah. The Tanakama said if you do chalitza with 2 or 3, and one meaning with 2, comma, or with 3, and one of them is found to be a karb apostle, it's going to be apostle chalitza because it has to be 3. Shimon Rabbi Yochanan found that they were machshir, and they said it's going to be valid with 2. And then the Mishnah ended with saying that there was a story with someone did chalitza between him and her in jail. The story came from Rabbi Kiva, and they says kasha. So Rabbi Yisrael Yomei Yom Nachman, it says in halacha koyse zok. The halacha is not like that pier, meaning that says that's Rabbi Shimon and Yochanan that say it's kasha with just 2 people. No, it's like the Tanakama says you have to have 3. That to do chalitza you have to have a bezna of 3. Says the Gemara, why are you saying this again? Rabbi Nachman already said this once before in the beginning of the parak of Kaval and Beis. Rabbi Yisrael Yomei Yom Nachman, he says chalitza b'shleish. You have to have chalitza with 3. Why have to say it 2 times? The Gemara explains. Shrichi, it was necessary. Because the if you're going to say only the first one that chalitza with 3, I would have said on middle katchila. That's initially. But after the fact that the trade that even 2 would be valid, you have to say the words ein halacha koyse zog. Halacha is not like that pier, meaning although this pier Reb Shimon and Yochanan Samlar are talking about after the fact, because the words of the Mishnah are cholza b'shnayim. If you did chalitza with 2, and that they're saying mafshirin. So I have to tell you that ein halacha koyse zog. You're saying even b'di evet. So you needed to say that. Now, if we only had our Mishnah of in halacha koyse zog, the halacha is not like that pier, like a Tanakama, meaning, but only like the Tanakama. So I would have thought to say, okay, the Eved, meaning after the fact, the halacha is like the Tanakama that chalitza is with 3, and that if you find one of them a karb apostle, it's going to be apostle. But if the old kasha, it's going to be a chalitza kshera, that it's enough for 3. But I would have thought to say that initially, because since the wording about Mishnah is b'diavad lashon, I would have thought to say, but initially the chamisha. They should require 5, like Rabbi Yehuda, as we mentioned on Daf Kofal V'Beis. So therefore, they were to say that by the machlekes Rabbi Yehuda and the Tanakama, to say Allah is like the Tanakama, to say that even the Ketchila, it's enough with 3. So the Ketchila and the Yevamot, I needed to say both ways. Because if I would have said only by the Ketchila, I would have thought to say that the Yevamot would be enough for 2. And if I only said the Yevamot, I would have said, oh, the Yevamot is for 3, but maybe I need 5. Mashman that no, the Ketchila and the Yevamot always has to be 3, which Taisus points out, although that we had stories that they didn't, but the 5, that's only assuming milsav in mechamisha, just to publicize it, so they would have 5. But not that you need to have 5, even like Ketchila, it's just for a different purpose, just to get the word out there. And we said in the Mishnah, there was a story that they did chalitza, was in jail, just the couple, and meaning this Yavam and Yevama, they did chalitza, and Rabbi Kiva said it's going to be valid. So the question is, if they did it just between themselves, do we even know that this happened? So Ravina Mishmal says no, but meaning they were locked in the jail, so obviously they were by themselves, but there were witnesses who saw it from the outside. And that's how we know that they did chalitza, and therefore that's going to be valid. And therefore, let's say the tzalva is going to be able to get remarried because we know that they did it. So the following question, just on the technicality of the story of its reporting. Maisa is the version like this. There was a story, avroi. Maybe there was, chalitza was between the Yavam and Yevama by themselves out of jail. But about Maisa and Rabbi Kiva bevasis, but the story came from Rabbi Kiva who he was in jail. Maybe the story was that this man and woman, they were in the jail, and then the story came from Rabbi Kiva. So Rabbi actually says both are true. And Taisa points out because that was a Messiah that they had, and we have other times stories that Rabbi Kiva we know he was in jail. But Beis is only in Maisa, or the Beis is in Ba Maisa. That actually the story happened in jail. Maybe it was the cell over, who knows? But the Yavam and Yevama were in jail, and it was just the 2 of them, and they did it by themselves without a bezdin. And then the story is brought in front of Rabbi Kiva, who he was also in jail, and Rabbi Kiva was machshir. Rabbi Kiva says, yes, it's going to be kosher b'yichidi. You don't have to have a bezdin when you're doing the chalitza. I think it's any time.